Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong says that the ruling People's Action Party's stance on corruption is non-negotiable and has vowed to uphold the highest standards of integrity. His comments coming after former Transport Minister S Iswaran was slapped with 27 charges, including 24 for obtaining items like tickets to football matches and musicals. All in, they're valued at over $380,000. Iswaran has resigned from cabinet and the party maintains his innocence.
In a doorstop interview organised shortly after charges were read out to S Iswaran, DPM Wong says justice will prevail. He also stressed the ruling People's Action Party's zero-tolerance approach to corruption, whatever the political price. Geraldine Yap tells us more.
To move ahead.
It was a point that resounded at last November's People's Action Party convention. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong emphasising that the party's commitment to incorruptibility is non-negotiable.
If you wear white, you must be white.
2 months later, on the day the country's former Transport Minister was charged with multiple counts of corruption and obtaining gifts, the message again is clear.
There can be no compromise, no relaxation, no fudging on this, no matter the political price. So the PAP government will continue to do everything we can to uphold the highest standards of integrity, incorruptibility and propriety. And that's how we maintain the trust that Singaporeans have placed in us.
Iswaran is accused of obtaining gifts amounting to more than $380,000 from property tycoon Ong Beng Seng. They include tickets to football matches, musicals and a ride on a private jet. Mr. Ong is credited with bringing Formula One to Singapore. Iswaran had been involved in negotiations. Mr. Wong was asked if the government will tighten the process for ministers to receive or reject gifts, and he says that there already is in place a code of conduct. For example, ministers should not receive gifts that place them under obligation or in a position of conflict of interest. But the government will continue to review and update the code, taking into account the learnings from this incident.
When we look at our system in Singapore, it's a system that we do our best to try and prevent and deter corruption. It doesn't mean that there will be no corruption. It doesn't mean that there will be no incidents. From time to time, cases do emerge, as we have seen in past years. But that's why CPIB is also a key part of the system. And they will investigate any incident thoroughly and, where necessary, take actions as they have done in this case.
Mr. Wong was also asked how the case would impact the leadership transition, which is to take place before the next general election and before the next party conference in November.
This plan remains on track. Will this incident have an impact on the party and party morale? I have no doubt that it will. But we cannot allow this political hit to compromise our zero-tolerance stance against corruption. And that's why the party, the government, will continue to do the right thing and do everything we can to keep our system corruption-free. And I believe Singaporeans expect no less from us.
Mr. Wong says other MPs in West Coast GRC have been taking care of residents in Iswaran's West Coast division. Those arrangements will continue, with the area's MPs assuring residents that they will still have their needs looked after.
Earlier today, S Iswaran resigned as Transport Minister and as a member of the PAP. Iswaran will also return all salary and allowances received ever since the graft probe began in July last year. Now, accepting Iswaran's resignation, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said that he is sad the former Transport Minister is leaving politics under these circumstances. But it is essential that he deals with such matters rigorously. Mr. Lee added that the integrity of the ruling party and the government must be upheld. Singaporeans, he said, expect no less. In his letters, Iswaran said that he rejects the allegations in the charges and is focused on clearing his name. He thanked the Prime Minister for the privilege and honour of serving. He also said that he's returning the salary and allowances even though he rejects the charges, as he was unable to discharge his duties while being investigated.
Mr. Chee Hong Tat has now been appointed Transport Minister in place of Iswaran. Mr. Chee had been performing in an acting capacity since July. Sustainability and the Environment Minister Grace Fu will take over Iswaran's Minister in charge of Trade Relations portfolio. And Mr. Grace Fu says she will strive to advance the nation's interests through trade negotiations in her new capacity as Minister in charge of Trade Relations. In a Facebook post, she emphasised the importance of continued free and open trade flows for Singapore's survival. She says the country cannot afford to turn inward in a time of increasing challenges and geopolitical uncertainty, and must promote cooperation with other nations. S Iswaran is out on an $800,000 bail after having his 27 charges read out to him. The entire court session lasted just 20 minutes. Lawrence Wong was there when Iswaran pleaded not guilty.
It's barely sunrise, but against the quiet of the morning, dozens of journalists are on high alert at the state courts, scrutinizing every passing vehicle. The scramble came just past 8. S Iswaran had arrived earlier than expected, almost an hour before court proceedings were due to start. Straight-faced and stoic, he was accompanied by his lawyers, including top attorney, senior counsel Davinder Singh. They ignored questions by reporters.
Mr. Iswaran, any comments about what's happening today? Mr. Iswaran, do you have any comments?
And headed straight into the building.
Inside, he huddled with his lawyers for about half an hour before his 27 charges were read out to him. It was hard to decipher any emotion as he pleaded not guilty to all of them. He left about 20 minutes later at about 9:20 a.m. So what did the charges relate to? Well, there were tickets to popular musicals like Hamilton, to football matches in England. A big chunk of it also involved tickets to the Singapore Grand Prix races, as well as a trip to Doha on a private jet.
They were allegedly gifted by property tycoon Ong Beng Seng. He's known as the man who brought the Formula One race to Singapore. Iswaran was the chairman of the F1 steering committee. All in, the gifts were over $380,000 in value. As Iswaran exited the courthouse, still impassive, reporters outside greeted him with questions. This time, he ignored some questions.
Why are you going on trial? I've been pleaded not guilty.
While softly replied to others.
When can we expect a statement, Mr. Iswaran? Is it coming up soon? Will you resign, sir?
At one point, Iswaran even cautioned the media to watch the step.
Please watch out, please don't trip.
As they hurried to get ahead of him for a clearer shot. The media frenzy continued up until he got into his car.
What exactly did former Singapore Transport Minister S Iswaran allegedly receive from billionaire Ong Beng Seng? Well, the bulk were F1 Singapore Grand Prix tickets over the years. In fact, more than 100 of them. 36 were for the prestigious all-access green room. In all, the tickets were worth over $347,000, or 90% of the total gift value Iswaran is accused of receiving. Iswaran also allegedly received tickets to football matches in London. Now, they include highly sought-after English Premier League games, such as between Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur. Iswaran is also said to have received some 40 tickets to various stage shows in the UK. They include performances like Thriller, Hamilton, and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Then, in late 2022, there were allegedly a private jet ride from Singapore to Doha, a night stay at the Four Seasons, and a business-class flight home. A few months later, Iswaran tried to return the cost of the second ticket to Mr. Ong, and for this, he was charged with obstructing the course of justice.